Hao heard his whole story and understood that Dorst had helped him activate the power of his sword, the Evil Lord Slash. That in turn had made him advance into a sword saint. Hao could tell he had improved a lot throughout the years. Leng Mo also informed him that Fire Li had made him his apprentice. This was one of the reasons why he had managed to advance so quickly. Luck had obviously also been a big factor. He had come close to dying multiple times. Hao praised him, saying he was a genius. Leng Mo introduced him to Bing Yu. He was an arbitrator, just like him, and was Bilanasi's apprentice. Hao told him that his best friend was the same as his best friend. He then changed the topic and asked him what had made him leave Skyway City. Leng Mo asked him if he still remembered why he had joined the Dare to Die group. Hao recalled what he had said, something that he had to deal with in the Fragrant Empire. Leng Mo confirmed it, saying it was the fourth Prince Brunate. This was also why he had come here. Hao knew that Brunat was starting a war with them, and asked him if he was planning on joining the army again. Leng Mo affirmed to his belief, and asked if that was okay with him. Hao thought it was wonderful. He had been planning on recruiting that new sword saint. Anyways, but he hadn't expected things would go this smoothly. He informed him that the Thunder Sword Saint, Linde, and he had been walking along the parameters when they saw the seven-colored thunder. He had ordered him to find out who it was. Since he had decided to join them, he had to go and report this right now. Leng Mo asked him to keep it a secret within Sunset. Brunate had been after him the second he had set foot in the Fragrant Empire. He had faked his death to come here and didn't want him to know that he was alive. He wanted to disguise himself as one of the troops, especially since he was a sword saint. Now. He knew he couldn't let Brunate get wind of this. Hao agreed to his request, saying he would fake an identity for him. He wanted to have a drink with Leng Mo, but he needed to head back now. Leng Mo told him he didn't need to worry. They would have lots of chances to do so in the future. Over in Skyway City, a staff member was informing the principal about the news of the seven-colored thunder appearing around the border area. It was expected to be the ascending of a sword sand. Fire Li realized that it had been quite a while since a new one had emerged. He figured he should go and pay him a visit to see what he had. Bilanasi pointed out what he had said about Leng Mo just arriving at Sunset. Sunset had just got a sword saint at the very same time. She asked him if it really seemed like a coincidence. Fire Li couldn't believe that Leng Mo had already ascended. It just felt impossible. He had just achieved the rank of a great swordmaster not long ago. Bilanasi asked him how he could say something like that. He should have been expecting his apprentice to advance quickly. Fire Li explained that he was just being realistic. It just felt too soon for him to become a sword saint. She asked him if he was afraid that he was going to become better than him. Fire Li protested, saying he was not easy to beat. She dared him to not act like a baby if it really turned out to be Leng Mo. The Fragrant Wind Empire had also received the news about the new sword saint. Brunate was not pleased with what was happening. Taylor had just died, and now Sunset Empire had another high-level warrior. He realized that the war was going to be tough. He felt like something was wrong. Even though Caesar had declared Leng Mo to be dead, the Holy Book was still able to sense his existence. Even more so, he just couldn't believe that they had managed to kill Taylor. He presumed that he would eventually come back for him if his goal was really to kill him. For now, he needed to stop thinking about Leng Mo, and needed to get his hands on the Holy Book that was in Sunset's possession. He walked over to a vase and moved it around, revealing what seemed to be a door to a secret passage. He was going to do some preparation in order to win the war. Everyone in his way was going to die now. Red brought Leng Mo to his newly allotted sword saint house. He admitted that it was a bit small in size, but it was the best they could offer here. The house seemed great to him, and he thanked Red. Red asked him to settle in for a bit, and he would come to talk about military stuff once he was well rested. The two entered the house, and since there was still some time before the war began, they decided they would meditate. Leng Mo was slowly getting used to his new sword saint abilities. After becoming a sword saint, his aura, circulation, and strength had improved a lot. Master Fire Li had mentioned that advancing to a sword saint would grant the person new skills, but he had yet to achieve his. He recalled that Fire Li's skill was to summon a sky fire. Even though he had mastered his flame blaze aura, he had ended up advancing with Evil Lord Slash. He wondered what kind of new skill he was going to get. The war was going to start soon, and he would be facing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. He needed to become familiar with every single skill of his if he wanted to stay safe. He tried to focus his aura onto himself. Suddenly, he could feel an intense spatial power. He felt like he was in the middle of the universe. He heard a loud roar coming from within. Something was telling him to destroy everything. This must have been why he would have negative thoughts whenever he picked up his sword. He wondered if all the spatial power was having a bad effect on him. He tried to fight back, resulting in an explosion of aura. His sword had come out on its own. He could tell that the power in Evil Slash now matched his own special powers. It could have been that he was the only one who could activate its power. Now he just needed to find a place to test these powers out. He realized that he had never drawn out its full potential before. He could feel a huge amount of energy trapped inside it and decided he would try and release it. He swung his sword, and everything within its path became dark. He sensed that he had split space. This was the real power of the evil Lord Slash. Lengmo was amazed. He had managed to obtain his Sword Saint ability. Just then, Bing Yu reached him, asking what had just happened there. He told him that he had felt a strong wave of energy while meditating. Lengmo apologized, saying he was just getting used to his Sword Saint abilities. Bing Yu was surprised to hear that he was behind it. He explained that his sword had done it. It had made him like it even more. Bing Yu asked him to show it to him. Lengmo instructed him to back off a little and put some protection first. He was going to try going all out. Bing Yu accused him of bragging. He dared him to show him everything he had. Lengmo announced he was going to start now. In his mind, he was trying to utilize the 3-style Tyrant Broadsword technique, along with the 7 deadly slashes. He wanted to see how the spatial elements would affect his moves. His aura began charging up. Bing Yu realized that he was condensing his aura. This was his so-called special technique. Lengmo grunted loudly and jumped up, ready to swing his sword. Bing Yu noticed the energy waves turning black. Lengmo slashed the space in front of him, shattering the ground with a thunderous noise. Lengmo couldn't have been happier with the outcome. The only problem was that it had drained him out. He realized that this could be his life-saving skill. He decided he would call it the Deadly Phoenix Slash. He asked Bing Yu what he thought about that name and asked him why he was leaving. Bing Yu felt irritated and told him he was going back to meditate. He hadn't expected Lengmo to improve this much after advancing to Sword Saint. He had to catch up with him at all costs. They had made a promise that they would always be together. He couldn't afford to become a burden. Lengmo smiled. He knew what Bing Yu was thinking. He could tell that Bing Yu had been motivated watching him. Over in the Sunset Empire's capital, Linda was asking Qianhao if he was actually serious about the Sword Saint being his former subordinate. Qianhao explained that he had served him at the border a few years ago and had now decided to join their side again. Just then, a messenger hurried inside, announcing he had something to report. Their spy at the Fragrant Empire had some important news. He had seen a 7-colored thunder appear over there. Its location had been confirmed to be in Brunate's royal palace. This was not good news for them. The messenger informed them that they were still waiting for more updates. The whole royal palace was trying to keep this incident quiet, while their spies were trying to figure out who had advanced. Linda asked Qianhao for his thoughts. He suspected that it might have been Brunat who had advanced. Qianhao tried to refute it, saying that it might be a trick. Brunat should have only been around Great Swordmaster level, and it should have taken him ages to get there. It could only have been possible if he had been hiding his strength, but his boastful personality didn't allow that. He doubted Brunate had caused this thunder just because he was afraid of their newly advanced Sword Saint. Rather, he might have been using this thunder to hype up his army. Lind admitted he had a point, but he was personally more inclined to believe that he was the one who had advanced. There would be no point in faking such news with their upcoming war. His battle for the throne with the second prince should have been at its climax at the moment. He had heard rumors saying that the great mage Taylor had died while fighting the apprentice of Firely. The Firely couple seemed to no longer be on his side, and now that the Fragrant Empire had lost 2 great mages as well as a sword saint, he must have used some sort of forbidden magic to advance in order to match their forces. All of this made sense to Qianhao, but he had never heard of such magic that could turn a great swordmaster to a sword saint just like that. Linda admitted that it wasn't 100% accurate, but it was still a possibility. From now on, they had to plan while assuming that Fragrant Empire had gained a new sword saint. He also wanted to know if the subordinate he had mentioned was reliable. Qianhao told him that he had also doubted him for a before when he had first met him. Lengmo used to actually work under him and was a friend of his. He had said that he was here for some personal issues with Brunat. That, along with his evil lord title, had earned him a lot of credibility. Now that he was a sword saint, it could benefit their forces. But on the other hand, he was still a double-edged sword. He didn't think it was appropriate for them to use him on too many combat missions since he might mess up their overall planning. For now, he was technically under Red, but Red had control over the entire border force. From what he knew of Red, he was too easy to be manipulated by emotions. He was afraid that Red would listen to Lengmo too much instead of their own orders. Lengmo seemed like an uncontrollable element, and he wanted to place him in their Dare to Die group. He decided they could make changes in the future if he showed his value. In case he was to ignore their orders, he would have to remind him of their friendship to calm him down and suppress his desperateness for revenge. This way, they could use him whenever they needed to. Linda was pleased and told him to continue according to plan. He asked him to hand Lengmo over to him if he was ever unsatisfied. Qianhao heeded his words and asked to leave. Bing Yu was still meditating. He could understand how much the war meant for Lengmo. He needed to meditate more so he could quickly catch up to him. He knew he couldn't assist him right now, and he didn't want to end up becoming a burden to him either. Suddenly, he started smelling meat. The aroma made him lose focus. Lang Mo was busy grilling a large piece of meat. Its smell was amazing. He tried to snap himself out of it, knowing that he needed to focus on meditating. He couldn't allow himself to get distracted so easily. None of this was helping, though. The smell kept coming back to him, and it seemed to be getting more and more intense. Lang Mo had walked right over to him and talked about how hard Bing Yu seemed to be working. He asked him if he wanted to try out this meat that he had just prepared. Bing Yu couldn't resist anymore. He called Lang Mo a devil for seducing him with food. Just then, his stomach started growling. He felt embarrassed, but he had no choice and decided to give in. As he was eating, Bing Yu told him that he hadn't seen him going to the military department at all, even though they were going to be fighting at war soon. Lang Mo told him not to worry about it. He didn't understand and inquired why he wasn't preparing for war. He didn't know anything about war himself, but he was sure Lang Mo was at least supposed to go and talk to the general. He was supposed to be a new soldier, and Red's army wasn't just going to listen to a newcomer. Lang Mo admitted that he would have done that if he was still a great swordmaster, but he was now a sword saint. This meant that he was too strong to belong in an army. Bing Yu guessed that Sunset would probably use him on special occasions. Lang Mo straight up told him they wouldn't. Bing Yu didn't understand why they wouldn't do so. He explained that it was because he was a sword saint. He told him to think about it. He was so strong, but he was still not one of them. They didn't trust him, and he was basically a double-edged sword. Bing Yu couldn't believe they thought that way. He asked him what he was going to do then. Lang Mo told him he would first see where they assigned him. He had been preparing his revenge for a very long time and didn't mind waiting a little bit longer. After 2 more days, Qianhao brought them to the Dare to Die camp. Lang Mo already expected this. Qianhao explained that the Dare to Die group had reached its peak during Lang Mo's lead, so he wanted him to manage here for him. He told him to not worry since he was not going to be fighting alongside the soldiers. He just needed to give out commands.